Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trader Merlin Show for your Tuesday, Taco Tuesday edition, Trivia Tuesday, all that kind of good stuff. Look at I got my disheveled over here today. Anyway, hope you're all doing well. I know it's been a very interesting trading day. Not what I expected. I expected a pullback in crypto a little bit. I didn't expect the shock and awe that we got from our markets with regards to what happened internationally. So I'm going to start there and then run through some of the topics you saw in the description for today's show. We've got a question came in from a viewer about buybacks from Boeing. I got to tell you, they're probably going to do the opposite here. They're probably going to issue more shares. We had questions about Nike earnings, the oil, and of course, this topic right here, which is the Black Swan event. Now, I've talked at length before. I think Mike LaRusso here came to one of the shows up in Downey and was asking, what do I think would be the next Black Swan? And in my mind, it was going to be conflict, but not the conflict that we're seeing today. More conflict between Taiwan, China, and the United States, and really the battle of AI and chip-making supremacy. Well, I still think that one is potentially on the table, although it'd be a long shot, and hopefully it doesn't happen. The other Black Swan event is, of course, more international conflict. And what we saw happen last night with a massive, ballistic missile attack from Iran on Israel just really starts to push that potential for a much more heated and escalated conflict in the Middle East to escalate. I said escalate twice. Anyway, what really makes it damaging, not only from the loss of lives that are incurring on both sides, on all sides of conflict and war, is the fact that we are now officially putting our name in there and we are using our weapons to help defend Israel, which doesn't matter where you stand on that one, that's okay. But the U.S. has kind of tried to step back a little bit, but now because we're using those, it does put a target on the United States a little bit. So the topic there is going to be that next Black Swan. And does this escalate? Does this continue to build and build and build? And do we see more sides join in this one? Of course, you look back at how long this is. This is really how long this has been going on. This is a battle of attrition. Right, you have two sides that don't like each other. They haven't liked each other for many, many, many years. And is that something that gets resolved very quickly? I don't think so. I don't think this is something that's going to get resolved quickly. And who knows how this is ultimately going to end. I wish it would be a peaceful resolution for the Iranians, for the Israelis, I have friends in Lebanon as well. We're all just trying to live our lives on a planet. Can we just get along? But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. There'll be more loss of life, and hopefully it doesn't escalate into something much more. Now, where it stands today, what it's going to do is going to significantly increase the price of oil, which we'll talk about here in just a second. That whole region, as it gets flared up, could cause supply chain disruptions, production cuts, etc., which, of course, jacks up price. Now, it's funny because we talked about the production cut potentially coming on Wednesday when the OPEC and JMMC meet. My feeling was they were going to, make a little bit of announcements. They were going to cut production, but they didn't even need to do that today because you had oil prices surge. Why was that? Well, of course, that conflict in the Middle East helped push that to the upside. Here is your chart of crude oil, which was your best performer on the day. 3.77% move to the upside. Not anything that's, like a massive day, but certainly a great turnaround over that, last few days we've had of sell-off. We've had 2 up days, and all of a sudden today follow through. For those of you who are really bullish on oil, and at this point I'm starting to become much more bullish on oil, you're going to need to see it get above that 72.40 mark to really get that momentum and say, okay, we're starting to potentially make some higher highs and break this downtrend that's been in place since October or September of 2023. So all in all, still in a bearish position here for crude oil, even though we had a great day. The question I have, and maybe you guys throw your thoughts in it, do you think that oil is going to continue to move to the upside, or is this just a knee-jerk reaction to the conflict in Israel? So maybe I'll do a poll because I like the polls better. Let's start a poll, and let's see, what should my question be? Well, do you think oil will continue to surge higher? HIGHER over the next 6 months. All right, there we go. I'm just going to do a two-sided poll here. Yes or no. Do you think that oil will continue to surge higher over the next 6 months? And you guys give me your poll results there. I think that as you step back and look at that bigger picture, there's obviously a lot of arguments as to why that would continue to surge. On the argument that would support a continuing rise in oil, you have most likely OPEC cutting production to drive prices higher. You have the conflict in the Middle East. On the downside, what could push prices lower is weakening demand, as John Rowland talked about, much more dependency on electricity, and that is, while it's not dominant yet, but it's starting to see shift to alternative fuel sources, whether it's hydrogen or electric. That could push things one way or the other as well. So I'm just going to let that. Thomasina says, yes, and not just because of Israel. Yes, I agree with that. This is not a pointing fingers at Israel or Iran or Lebanon or any other country. It's the collective disruption and conflict between them all. Anytime you have really big instability in a region of the world, you have to consider, what is that region of the world good for? I mean, imagine if all of a sudden we had huge disruption and conflict going on in Brazil. Well, Starbucks would probably be my first shorting opportunity. Why? Because it's going to disrupt the supply chain of coffee. Brazil's major export is coffee. Therefore, we would probably see Starbucks have to jack their prices way up. People would stop going there, and their earnings would fall. So, short Starbucks. Glenn says, up to your trend line. So let me bring that one up there, my light sweet crude. So you think it'll go back all the way up to that trend line? I mean, hell, if it does go all the way up to the trend line, you guys, that's a pretty substantial trade. I mean, if you go from where we are right now, and let's not go straight up, because I can't do that. It'll probably have to drift up and go to this trend line. You're looking around a 10% pop. I mean, that'd be pretty good. It'd be a pretty nice pop up in oil. Now, says, I don't think oil will go up unless a refinery or oil field is struck. Well, that would be the logical escalation here. It would be the logical escalation is go after those refineries and extraction points and shut those down. Israel, not as much of an oil exporter as Iran is. Would a Trump win lower prices as supply in the U.S. is unlocked? Well, that's a good question, Big Ab. I'm not sure how full we've gotten our reserves back from when Biden sold off the reserves, which was a pretty good strategic thing. He sold them at a higher price and now buying back at lower prices. So, I'm not sure on how full our strategic reserves are right now. I'm sure one of you could probably look it up, and so I don't have to say a number and be completely wrong. Possibly, it wouldn't surprise me to see Trump do that, but let's remember Biden is also the one who has sold oil, strategic reserves, and pushed oil prices down, and that could certainly be a factor out there. The U.S. is sending a few thousand to the Middle East. News today. Yeah, I know, I saw that, Scott, and it's like, this is not our battle. But, as historically has been, the U.S. will be the police force for the world. And it's funny, I got into an interesting discussion with some friends about this the other day, and, one of the topics that came up is that the U.S. is still providing the military for Japan after World War II, and it's that's shifting. It's definitely shifting, but man, come on, here we are. It's been 70 years, almost 80 years. Can we let you guys have your own military by now? Anyway, let's go see what the results were. Interesting. 68% of you said yes, crude oil would be higher in the next 6 months. 34% said no. So fairly split, although definitely more bullish bias out there, and I would put myself in that bullish bias just because I don't see this tension de-escalating, and I also see OPEC and Russia as still being a problem for us. We have 40,000 there. It seems the government can't be still and work on restoring our country, but no, they want to go and yeah. Well, remember, Oliver, if we don't have an enemy, then we have no need for a military. And the military is our greatest expense. So we've got to have an enemy. Let's go fight someone. Always got to pick a fight. I think if we had the right leadership, I mean, it's tough to say this, but I think if we had the right leadership, there would be a lot more cooperation and peaceful around the world. But countries thrive off of conflict and power. All right, so that's oil surging. Next piece here. We did a lengthy discussion on this yesterday. Was that longshoreman strike? I think that this is that double whammy. That double whammy we saw today. So let's bring up that S&P 500 to show what happened. And it wasn't like a catastrophic down day, except for my Rivian, which that one stung today. That definitely stung. I almost a 7% slide in my Rivian shares. Yowza! Good thing I sold calls at $12 strike price, but it's the puts that I got to worry about at this point. So I'll keep you updated as that one progresses. There is your zone. Now, what's interesting is where S&P came to today. Oops, chart of the week. What's going on here? Sorry, things moved. Something moved on my screen here. Oh, I know what happened. I resized my screen and it changed everything. So there we go. So if you look at the yellow box that I've drawn on here, I mentioned this early in the week and late last week on how we really had this kind of slow moving up, not a lot of excitement. Candles are really narrow, bodies are really narrow. Well, we've seen that change over the last couple of days. We've got slightly bigger on Monday and then a pretty big candle today, but notice where we bottomed out at. The bottom of that candle going back to Friday, September 20th, that low point was 5,733.5. Today, our low point, 5,733. So we are half a point lower than that low point, but still, in my opinion, respecting that. I don't want to call it a demand zone, but just kind of respecting that low tail there, which has been the kind of the lowest point for the past couple of weeks. A close down below this, which I think is probably going to happen this week. If this continues with the longshoreman strike, I don't know if you guys, I don't know the guy who's the chairman of the longshoremen, but I watched a couple presentations or speeches by him. I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. I think that the longshoremen right now have the upper hand. If you look at it from a negotiation perspective, they have a lot of leverage right now, and wouldn't surprise me to see them really hold out for far better pay. And the sticky part will be that automation. Do they agree to removing automation from their assembly line or from their shipping ports? I can't see that happening. I think it's going the opposite way. So I do think you'll see more pressure here to the south side again. Technically, it looks okay, right? That guy stands on business. He does. I think he's got a little bit of a selfish attitude. Granted, I do agree with him. You look at what the ports do as far as bringing business to America. They bring in trillions of dollars worth of goods and services which make our country run. Now, his attitude is we want our lion's share of that. Well, look, you're getting paid pretty good. Your salaries are pretty decent and you got great benefits. You want a 50%. I saw an 80% and I saw a 50% pay raise. 50% pay raise would put the average salary for a longshoreman over $200 and something thousand a year. Is that justified? Is that warranted? I don't know. I'm not a negotiator here, but I have a feeling they're going to stand their ground for that, and might make a lot of people here look for jobs as a longshoreman. Other indexes. That was your S&P, which actually looked okay today, even though it was a big down day. Technically, this is where I think we have a bit more of a problem, even though we didn't close down below that yellow box. This was the breakout point that we had established earlier for the NASDAQ. Well, we come all the way back through that and broken down even lower. So to me, this is a little bit more of an interest point on that NASDAQ. Let me get rid of some of these lines. I start drawing too many lines on here. I'll get rid of all of them. And I'll put a line like I did on the S&P right at that same low point. You can see that we tiptoed further across it today on today's big down candle. Now, Russell was a little bit worse, right? The chart doesn't look as strong, although it seems to hold. It hasn't closed down below the low from September 25th, but all three of these indexes showing some significant weakness, and my gut tells me that this right here, this longshoreman strike, is going to drag on and on and on and on and on and on. So Naum says they only make $40 an hour. So the statistic that I'm referencing says that the average longshoreman's making $154 was the number I read. That, of course, is taking in your base layer guys. You're at bottom, but the barrel making $40 an hour. I'm assuming. I haven't seen it, and then the higher one. So your average is $154, somewhere in that ballpark. That's the number I was referencing. So yes, I'm sure there's people making lower. That's why I said average. But yeah, there certainly are some people who are making less than that, but they'll get a bump up here as well. Then when everything they have to buy, will they complain about the prices rising during the strike and after to cover their salaries increases? It's a good question, Lisa. And if you look at how much goods and services will rise commensurate to their salary increases, I think they'll be smiling happily. Yes, they're going to be paying more for goods and services, because if these shipping ports all of a sudden have to pay a lot more for each container that's coming through and more labor cost, you know where the costs are going to come from. They're going to pass right through to you and me, which will make more inflationary product out there. So for you and I, it's going to be disturbing because, yes, this is going to slowly increase the cost of goods again, depending on what the contract negotiation is. But I can assure you that the contract negotiation is not going to take a step back in pay in any way. It will only move pay and benefits and technological changes forward. So, yes, we are going to pay the price for this. Essentially we need it. I mentioned this yesterday about the unionization of it. It makes it a bit of a challenge because when you get everybody on the same page, striking at the same time, it comes to a grinding halt. And, where are those other boats going to go? I did not see, some of you may have read this, I did not see, are these tankers or shipping container boats being rerouted to Long Beach in California or anything outside of that geographical eastern coast and Gulf area. I'm not sure. I haven't had time to look at it today, but I think that they're going to see. I saw 150 to 200K a year from Lisa. Yep. All of this, I talked to my friend who works at Long Beach ports, and he said they're automated and they're also 80% pay raise. He said it would be probably like 60% over the course of X amount of years. Makes sense. I didn't realize they were 80% automated. I thought they were a lot less than that. But just given my feelings of AI, at some point, I think that this whole facility will be 90+%, to the point if you have just a few managers of the overall plant and facility and making sure everything runs smooth. Otherwise, it'll all be automated. Lisa says, I think the sad part is how much the unions profit. Yeah, I believe the longshoreman union boss makes like $900,000 a year. Yeah. I mean, hey, he's got a tough job and good luck to him. This will just be more expensive goods and services for you and me. And again, the longer it drags out, the more troublesome it'll be for the economy. And part of me, as an investor, someone looking for long-term investments, I'm running around looking around trying to find stuff that I would like to buy right now. I don't see anything. Now, if we start to see this drag on and on and on for a few months, I might start to see some attractive prices and feel comfortable buying into these markets. But this is a major turn of events going on. I didn't get a chance to put the gentleman's name. I think it was John asked about Boeing share buyback. So I had to real quickly look at this because I did not hear anything about a buyback. They've been on share buybacks. I think up until June 24th of this year, Boeing had bought something like, $6.7, $6.8 million this year. So, okay. Great, good to see Boeing buying back shares, but of course with the ongoing strike and other issues from Boeing, probably not going to be buying back shares. And John, the thing that's going to happen with Boeing is not a share buyback. I think you misread that. They're looking at selling more shares to shore up their holes financially. And I think the number was $10 billion, and they haven't done it yet. But it's something that you're seeing headlines about where they're mulling it over, thinking about selling $10 billion worth of shares. Now, here's the problem. So I have Boeing puts at the 140 mark, right? You guys remember I sold puts a little while back at the 140 strike price. That was my number I wanted. And you can see actually when I did that was back here somewhere around early September. Got great premium for it, by the way. It was fine. And I'm not nervous. I don't think that's the hard point here. But if you look at what they're doing, if they decide to sell another $10 billion worth of shares, what does that do? That dilutes the value of each current share. So when those $10 billion get sold, if they were to do that, you're going to see the price of Boeing slide pretty significantly. Now, luckily for me, my expiration is October 18th. So as long as that doesn't happen before the 18th, I think I should be fine, no problem at the 140 strike price on Boeing. I had actually thought about selling some more puts at the 140 strike price because the premium is still pretty tasty. But I'm not going to do so because of just the uncertainty. If they decide to sell $10 billion worth of shares, 140 could evaporate very quickly and put myself into a more dangerous position. So, John, they're not doing a buyback. They are thinking about selling shares. Again, diluting ownership, which would keep this downtrend going. So something we'll keep an eye on here. I'm optimistic that my puts will expire worthless at the 140 strike price. If we get past this point, and let's say it gets down to on Monday, October 21st, and my shares have expired worthless, I'll really seriously consider selling the 140s again. Other than that, I'll probably wait a little bit longer because I just don't like going into uncertainty of something like that, of a $10 billion share sale. That could really hurt the price. Boeing's earnings are coming up right after. So you can see it, October 23rd, Fury, is when they come out with their earnings. So that's one of the reasons I was okay selling the October 18th, right? It's a monthly expiration. It's the 18th, and then earnings is the week after. So I should be fine there. If they make that announcement, Fury, they'll probably do it at the earnings call. So if I do sell the 140s, I know it's tricky. I may actually wait until after that. And if they do make that announcement, you'll see the share price probably fall sharply. And then who knows, maybe I'll even sell a lower strike price. You do see some way back here from 2022 where it might be some areas to look to sell some Boeing. Again, I am a firm believer that Boeing will be fine out of all this. I think at the end of the day, Boeing's going to be, okay, fine. We weathered the storm. We've weathered the strike. We weathered the doors falling off airplanes, and we'll be back. They're too big of a defensive player for the United States and commercial, so I think they'll be fine over time. So it's a question of where do I feel good? Yeah, I'll be fine with this. I think I'll be fine. You never know, right? You never know. I mean, obviously, things can change on a dime like we witnessed out there today. And last piece that I was going to get into was the Nike earnings. Now, the reason I bring this one up is if you look at the Nike chart, here we go. Here's your Nike chart. They're down 6% in the after-hour session. Right now, they're trading at 83.81, which is the horizontal dashed line on your screen right now. It's very slight, hard to see, but that's where they're currently trading at. And I had looked at this one on their last earnings announcement. You guys might recall I was thinking about buying some Nike. I was like, you know what? They're such a staple. They're not going anywhere. They may struggle with costs from China and things like that, but I didn't sell any puts. I didn't buy any directionally, and I've been kind of waiting for it. And now you have another not the best earnings announcement from Nike. Their numbers came out with earnings per share were 70 cents versus 52. So actually, let me bring up the actual one. And they had a revenue of 11.59 billion versus 11.65. So where is my, one second, I'm bringing up the earnings calendar here. So if you look at it today, so they had beaten earnings, but they really kind of did not give the rosy forecast going forward. They talk about sale declines, even though their estimate was 52 cents and they came out at 70 cents. That's great. And revenue was higher. Their forecast was not so good. Now, they did this last time as well, where they lowered their forecast, and all of a sudden they tended to do pretty good. So all in all, I'm regretting not buying Nike back at the July lows. And by the way, everybody, if you hear just really crazy loud noises today on my show, there's an event happening here in Southern California that happens every year, and I highly recommend, if you are in Southern California, or even if you're outside of SoCal, and you have the opportunity to come out to Southern California for this weekend particularly, it's the Huntington Beach Air Show. It is one of the coolest air shows. I'm not usually a huge air show fan, but this one is off the charts. They do things with airplanes that I just don't think was physically possible, but I witnessed it with my own eyes. I believe it was the F-24 Hornet, or this plane it came flying in, doing Mach, going faster than the speed of sound, because you could see the sound, the speed of sound bubble bursting around it. Like, it was really kind of crazy. Then it did a full 360 loop, and as it was coming down, straight down, it stopped in midair. It turned around, so it was now pointing straight up, and hung there for a few seconds, continued to do a full 360, and then pointed straight down and took off. This ship stopped in midair, and I still feel like I watched something out of, a Tom Cruise movie that is not physically possible. Like, how do you get I don't know how many thousands of pounds that aircraft is, moving straight down out of a loop to stop, and then pivot upwards, point straight at the sky, and just hover there? That was mind-boggling to me. I don't know what plane that was, but it was absolutely incredible. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on tangents. Let's see. Boeing is basically the U.S. aerospace company. I agree, Big Eb, which is why I think they're getting off lightly with some of the punishments that they've faced over the years. It's like, okay, bad, don't do that. Just go away. We'll make it go away. Just stop. But yeah, they are big. They are our country's aerospace, for sure. Now, Raytheon and Northrop Grumman might disagree with you, but we don't have too many commercial airline manufacturers either. So you've got this double whammy, defense and commercial. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. No, it didn't stall. No, it didn't stall. I want to go back and record it. I think I might actually have a recording somewhere. But it just hung there. It just stuck in space like it was on a string in the sky, and then it pointed back down to the ground and just went. It was incredible. But yes, it's a all weekend, and they do their training right now. They're practicing, so I'm on a second story, and you can just hear them just screaming by doing tests, and it's going to be all weekend. So, any weapons manufacturers you're looking into being bullish on? I'm not that well versed. It's obviously going to be the Northrop Grumman and Raytheon. Look at Northrop Grumman's chart today. Northrop Grumman had a nice little 2.99% pop. Oh, we're going to war? You're going to use our tools. And let's go RTX. RTX Corporation as well was up 2.67%. I mean, these are your big staples. I don't know a lot of the smaller names, Fury, to be honest. But maybe I'll look into that, because it would be interesting to do a defense show and see the full spectrum from the big daddies like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman into the smaller little tiny defensive guys that have specialized weapons. And as technology gets better and better and better, there's more and more weapons popping up that may make some of these companies very valuable. Let's see. I've seen it. I didn't put LMT. Yeah, Lockheed Martin. Any defense stock today. I mean, today is like one of those days that defense stocks are cheering for, right? Lockheed Martin was 3.6. So yeah, you look at this chart of Lockheed Martin, and it just tells you that peace is not really an option. Or if you look at Lockheed Martin going all the way back into 2016, it was $237 a share. And it's had some chop, but it's really just nothing but up. And particularly, look at the last, couple of years. If you go from the beginning of 2024, actually not even the beginning, if I go to these lows that happened in October of 2023 to where Lockheed Martin is right now, you're looking at roughly 53.91% gain. Now, that's not dramatic, especially when you look at things like, NVIDIA and some of these other high-tech firms, but that's a pretty significant pop-up there. What did Margaret say? I hope the Middle East war does not spread internationally. Yeah, Margaret, it's tough. It's like, my analogy to it is, it's like the two little kids that have just always just beat the crap out of each other, right? They hate each other. They always fight. And it's the smaller kids, right? It's these little kids that aren't that, not that worried about them, but they just kind of always go at it. And then, I was one of these kids. I never got really beat up, but I always had the big kids defended me all the time. I loved it. I could kind of get in fights if I wanted to. And you look at, Israel, Iran, and others in that area. These are the smaller, not going to say insignificant, but less impactful with military might, although Israel's getting pretty beefy from weapons they're getting from us. Then all of a sudden, it starts to create a bifurcation of governments and countries. So like in World War II, you have, the Allies and the axis of evil. You have the polarized countries. And now countries are forced to pick whose side they want to be on. So the U.S. has made it very clear, we're with Iran. Freudian slip there. We're with Israel. Now, what were to happen if China says, hey, we're with Iran? And Russia jumps in and says, hey, we're with Iran. Now, all of a sudden, you have a far greater power with China and Russia collectively, and add Iran in there, than the U.S. and Israel, right? Now, all of a sudden, this could be very bad and much more loss of life should those two big bullies get involved with it, in this case, three big bullies, and continue to fight this feud. So I'm hoping we can solve it diplomatically. There's just far too much of a price to pay on human life than whatever this dispute is over. There's got to be an easier way to fix it with diplomacy, but again, I think a lot of it comes back to the need for war, the need for a villain. Margaret says, I hope oil prices don't move super high. I don't think you'll get them super high. I think you're going to get a pop in crude oil. In the question, I think it was that Naum that said it? I think, back up to that trend line. That's certainly the most logical point. That's only 10%. I mean, keep in mind, we moved about 2.44% today. And since I've drawn this line, notice that crude oil is retreating already. You guys can see where I started that line. Let me get rid of this one here. The diagonal line was drawn off the closing bar of today's candle. And all of a sudden, you can see it's already starting to fall back down. It was 3-point-something% earlier. Now it's 2.44%. So in the after hour, we're starting to see that sell off just a little bit. But yeah, logical would be getting up towards that trend line, or at least some of these more recent highs here. Although you never know. Maybe the power of that downtrend could continue. I think OPEC will be interesting to see tomorrow what their decisions are on oil and production costs, etc. Let's see. Finder says Russia is pretty depleted in Ukraine, though. Yeah, they are. I think one of the, Russia's big, they may not just be military. They can also do things like cut off oil supplies, and that certainly has an impact on countries. So, let's say that you have the European Union, for the most part, I think would side with Israel, and that would be because the United States is siding there. We're going to keep that diplomacy. However, Russia supplies a lot of the oil and heating oils for Europe. So could they start playing that game? And hey, we're going to cut off. They did that with Germany a while back. And we're going to cut off the supplies to Germany, maybe cut them off to the rest of the EU as we're going into winter time. That's also warfare. It may not be physical conflict, but it's more psychological or industrial warfare. Will natural gas start its move up? Shmev, I don't know. Talking with John Rowland the other day, it doesn't feel like natural gas is. We did see a recent pop. Where's my natural gas chart? We did see a recent pop, and it certainly looks better because it's not making new lows, but we haven't really made new highs either. If I were to draw a line across the peaks, which start somewhere around October of 2023, and connect these last 2 points, there's your peak there. A little more challenging to draw this line across these lows here. I'm kind of cutting off tails, but you get the general idea that we're in a pennant formation of compression. And I'm kind of of the belief that we are going to see natural gas prices move back up, but per the discussion with John Rowland the other day, he didn't really think so. He thought we were going to kind of flounder here and not really do much with direction with regards to natural gas. So I think I just said crude oil, but I meant natural gas. Let's see. Gas is $3.99 day before yesterday. After today, back to $4.35. Yeah, luckily, I don't drive very much, so I probably fill up maybe once every month and a half to 2 months. But yeah, when I filled up the other day, it was $4.25. Where are you shopping, Oliver? Arco? Are you an Arco guy? $3.99. That's cheap. All right, so we've gone kind of through our top markets today. We went and looked at natural gas. I'll just bring up Rivian, which is painful today. You saw the just a big drop today in Rivian's prices, and in the after hour it's up just a little bit, but not looking good for the position that I was in. If I get exercise at $11.50, the $11, I think I'm at like $10.95 or $10.90 would be my average price. So yeah, that one hurt today. We'll see. I still got a few days left there. We were looking so good over the past couple of days. I actually thought we'd start to see this back up above that $11.50 mark, and it would be an easy trade. But yep. Trading keeps you on your toes. It's getting winter here, and cheap gas will be perfect. Yeah. Well, we'll see. Natural gas usually will probably rise as we get into a cold winter. Let's hope it's a cold winter. Last year was a bit of a mild one. All right, I'm going to run through economic calendar and earnings calendar for tomorrow. If you guys have questions, type them on in, and we'll get to those. I wanted to look at the Tuesday stuff here to kick off the month. When I was looking at this, really doesn't look that great. You saw for the United States, manufacturing numbers, so your final manufacturing PMI was slightly higher than expected. Okay, great. So we started off good there 15 minutes into the trading day. But then you had, the ISM manufacturing PMI. That came out lower than expected. JOLTS job openings was good. That was higher than expected. But manufacturing prices declining. Construction spending was negative. They expected it to be positive. That was not a good sign. So not a lot of really good stuff with regards to economic data. Tomorrow, you're left with the bigger announcements for the week. So this is the second biggest employment number for the week. That's the ADP non-farm employment change. They're expecting it to go from 99,000 up to 124,000. So we'll see if that comes in line. Remember, the talk track is unemployment's rising. Things aren't looking as good. Well, the ADP non-farm employment change, if we went from 99 to 124, that'd be great. That's showing an increase in jobs, and that would be in the face of what the FOMC has been, or not the Fed, the Fed has been saying, which is they see much more higher inflation. Now, we had a bunch of FOMC members speaking today. You also have Hammack, Masalam, Bowman, Barkin, all speaking tomorrow. So more FOMC joy for those of you that like that intraday volatility that they tend to cause. So you got to be careful with that one. And then on the earnings front, we do have a couple companies reporting earnings. You're going to have Tilray, ConAgra Brands, Levi Strauss, and RPM Industries reporting earnings. And that is pretty much it. What do these FOMC members say when they speak? They'll give a little bit of... They can't say too much. Certainly, they're not going to go and say, well, Jerome Powell's wrong for doing this. They will never do anything like that. If you start to see more of the voting members say, well, I'm feeling that, we should do 25 basis point cuts from here on out, right? We'll start to paint a clearer picture of what that actual number will be. Remember, we were told a couple weeks ago that it's going to be 50, 50, 25 for the remainder of the year. Now it looks like 50, 25, maybe 50. Jerome Powell's speech, what he gave, which wasn't an FOMC thing, was just at a conference. His speech pretty much, in my mind, solidified 25 and 25. So 2 more rate cuts this year, 25 basis points each. Margaret says, do they ever market move? Yes, they are. They definitely are market moving, but not as big as Jerome Powell, obviously. Jerome Powell is kind of the summary of all of them together, whereas this way we get a little bit of a view as to what each one was thinking. It's kind of like the FOMC meeting minutes, right? The FOMC meeting minutes, you'll get a sense as to what each member was thinking, how they voted. This gives them an opportunity to say publicly what they're thinking about inflation, about growth, about jobs, about interest rates, and that just offers more clarity into what that rate decision may be going forward. Personally today, I think was just kind of this kind of perfect storm of international conflict, the reality that we're not going to get as many rate cuts as people thought, and markets just slightly overbought into overhead supply. So perfect, a little bit of a pullback. Any strike news? I have no strike news other than they're striking. The ports are shut. So there's going to be more and more boats lining up to come to shore until there's a resolution. And it sounds like they're going to dig in their heels, and it could be a prolonged fight. I didn't hear anything about the president stepping into this one. I'm pretty sure anything longer than a week, he's going to step in here, because that's obviously going to impact us during the holiday season. And no president wants that on his final days in office. Are you going to watch the debate tonight? No, I will not watch the debate tonight. Absolutely not. Apologize. I don't watch the debate. I just think that we could do better. I just don't like I don't like how two human beings treat each other. So I don't want to watch that. It's like bad reality TV. Reality TV, like you watch Desperate Housewives or the True Wives of Atlanta. It's all over-exaggerated drama designed to elicit a response from the audience. It's scripted drama for those reality shows. And personally, I believe that the debates are the same thing. They say, oh, they don't know the questions. BS. I'm sure they know the questions. Although sometimes they just went off on tangents. But no, I'm not interested in it. I'd rather read the Cliff Note versions of what it was and pick out the points that I'm interested in and see what their stances were on those issues. But I'd rather take my time, watch it myself, and filter through all of the finger pointing and bickering and name calling and, oh, you're a 4-year-old. Well, you're stupid. I don't need to see my elected officials do that. It just bothers me. I mean, bullish for DX moving forward. Not necessarily moving forward. Great question. That's a great question, Robert. Not necessarily moving forward. I don't think it's going to break the trend. I think we might get a little move up, a reprieve. Remember, we're still going to be cutting rates, just not as quick as expected. So, now the question is, does this trajectory move back up here? And we see it break, above this, call it the 101.90 mark, maybe 102 mark. Do we get above that? Or is this just a slight little consolidation period where we see and then it continues to drift lower? Because the reality is rates are still going to go lower, maybe not as fast as expected, but they are still going to go lower. So I don't think it's that piece where you just go get the big run up, where you get this huge move up here on this news. I think it'll maybe bounce a little bit, maybe the top of that yellow box, at the maximum, getting up to maybe 103, this area where it previously turned before, and then continuing that trend down. So I'm still actually bearish on that dollar index. The butt kissing after debates is worse than the actual. Yeah, it is. It is. It's so weird. You can stand on stage and really just throw absolute hate at each other. I mean, it's like, man, God, stop. You all want to do what's right for the country, so stop attacking each other and just tell me what you're going to do as opposed to what that person didn't do or how ill-qualified that person is. Just tell me what you're going to do. Forget about making them look bad. Make yourself look good. That should be what you should do. But anyway, yeah, and then afterwards, how they coddle each other. It's not for me. Not for me. But hey, if you're into that type of thing, awesome, good, go for it. I hope it's beneficial and helps you determine what which candidate you're going to be voting for, and more clarity on the issues that you're going to be voting for as well. Oh man, Les, I'm envious. He says gas in Cape Canaveral was $3.11 today. Whew, you lucky dog. Given the conflict, I'll probably be looking at $4.55 gas here in the next couple weeks. All right, that'll do it for me, everybody. I'm going to wrap up here before I even get close to a 1 hour show. So we had oil surge. We talked about potential black swan. Let's hope it doesn't get to that level. But, this escalated very quickly. I haven't seen, too much of a death toll from the missiles attacking Israel. But, man, I can't imagine living in a country where every other night or, it seems like there's always some possibility of missiles being launched at my country. And the video footage of it is just like, man, we talked about disasters the other day where I've got earthquakes out here in California, and we got, Oklahoma with tornadoes, and we've got hurricanes on the East Coast. Those are the only disasters I think are tolerable, and a disaster that's man-made to me just doesn't make any sense. We've got too little time. I'm surprised it doesn't get physical. That'd be pretty funny. It'd be interesting to see one time where they just say, okay, guys, we're going to put on boxing gloves and just go for it. Like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk talked about doing a boxing match. Now, if it's an MMA fight, there's no chance on earth that Elon Musk would win, because Zuckerberg actually is a pretty good MMA fighter. He's getting better. He's training with some of the best out there, so he's going to take down Musk. But in a boxing match, Elon Musk has his weight. He could throw that weight around. Anyway. No death from the missiles, but there was killing spree in Tel Aviv. Really? Good. I mean, I'm glad there was no death from the missiles, but peace, man. Let's be peaceful. Anyway, send me topics for tomorrow. I still have to do the show called The House Always Wins, but, taking on this kind of new role for myself at Trading Academy, I've got just so much new projects and things going on, which I'm hoping that in the next few months, you guys will see a lot of really cool new things and initiatives to help build the community even more on Trading Academy's side. So looking forward to more there. But yeah, it's taken a lot of my time. So I haven't had the opportunity to build out the House Always Wins session that I think KT has been asking for. TK, I always forget. TK or KT. Anyway. That's going to do it for me. Thanks, guys. Email me, tradermerlin@gmail.com, if you have something you want to discuss tomorrow or feedback on today's show. If you have something you want to post on the YouTube channel as well, go ahead and do that, and I'll incorporate those into tomorrow's show. So thanks, everybody. I will see you on our Wednesday show. Take care.